Welcome back to the ZERT Coffee and Chaos Podcast, the show where we talk about anything and everything relating to what it means to be a survivalist and a prepared individual in today's society. I'm your host, Chris Bartigone, ZP002. Today with me on the show, we have a special guest, Wayne Black. Wayne, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Awesome, man. Awesome. And I know that we both have a mutual friend, Brett Russo, and that's how we got you here. And I can't wait to dive into all that we're going to talk about today. But before we get into that, I want to just do my usual opening for all of our listeners out there. And I just want to say thank you for all you guys being here and supporting ZERT and supporting the ZERT Coffee and Chaos podcast. As you guys are aware, our shows air on Thursdays on Spotify and Apple and through the Firearms Radio Network and anywhere else that picks up these audio podcast. The video portion of this does head out on the YouTube channel, and that is the ZERT Coffee and Chaos YouTube channel. We do have two of them. So if you haven't already, please head over and find the ZERT YouTube channel and the ZERT Coffee and Chaos YouTube channel. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell notification so you get notified when we drop new episodes or new videos. Today's sponsor of the show is MedTac International, and MedTac International is also a Florida company. They're located in Miami that does medical gear, medical training, and a variety of stuff. And we'll link their website down below in the comment section of this video. MedTac International for all of your medical IFAC med kit needs, whether it's your IFAC or your car kit. But great place to go. And as always, ZERT members do get a discount over on their website. So head over there, let them know we sent you, and Marco's a good guy. We'll have him on the show here soon. But all right, Wayne Black, how are you doing? Now, initially we were supposed to have this show last week, and you had a slight issue, man. That is definitely not a fun time. How'd that go?
That came out okay. And anytime you have to go to the dentist other than a checkup was not a good time. But I broke a tooth, so it's my fault for eating too much, I guess.
It's the worst. I actually stopped eating almonds because of that kind of, as we get older here, you never know. Like you said, the last thing you want to do is have to go to a dentist and have a broken tooth fixed. I actually broke a tooth right in the beginning of COVID. And as you know, they were not seeing anybody, and that was horrible. And it was like one way in the back. And when they were finally opened up, we had to go get that thing pulled. But man, oh man, that is just not fun. Exposed nerves, tooth pain is the actual worst. But glad you are doing better now. So
good.
All right. So folks, I was contacted by, like I said, a mutual friend of ours, and he recommended having you come on the website. And your website is pretty simple. It's wayneblack.com. And you guys offer a variety of different services when it comes to, I guess, security and preparedness in a variety of different things. Wayne, why don't you give a little bit of a elevator pitch here to our listeners and give a nice detailed bio on who you are and what you guys do.
Thanks. Well, like I said, happy to be here. It sort of dovetails what you all are doing, the good work that you do, and we want people to be prepared. Too many people today have normalcy bias, and that is to say they have a form of denial. They think that what they see on TV is always happening to somebody else. It can't happen to them.
Yep.
I got asked to write a book about school security, which I did. It's called School Insecurity, and
Okay.
#1 on Amazon right now. It's been out about a year and a half.
Excellent.
In the book, we give parents and grandparents the assessment tool to ask the schools, "What are you doing to protect my child?" So that's all about prevention. In addition to that, we train armed school security in tactics. Law enforcement is required to qualify, unless you're in a special unit, once a year.
Right.
We're qualifying armed school security people in Florida and around the country every quarter.
Wow.
And they're using a red dot system, RDS, and
Okay.
so they're more accurate. And you know what? If they don't qualify, they don't carry a gun at school until they qualify again. So we're trying to enhance all that. And in addition, we're doing school assessments. We're taking a look, a third-party assessment, telling schools what issues they have. Are they everything from locking doors to alarms to an emergency response plan? So we're just trying to help, trying to save people's lives in
Yeah.
advance, Chris.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's interesting. Obviously, um, I'm in Woodbury, Connecticut. And prior to me living in Woodbury, Connecticut, I lived in Newtown, Connecticut. And where I lived was 2 miles from Sandy Hook. Um, I was not living in Connecticut when Sandy Hook happened. And, unfortunately, Sandy Hook wasn't the first and unfortunately won't be the last incident that that we will see like that. But Sandy Hook rings true. Like, I mean, it just resonates with everybody because of the severity and, just the disgustingness of its nature and then the victims of that school. And it's interesting to hear what you do. And so the book you have, let's start with that before I continue down that path. So the book you have is out on Amazon right now, called School Insecurity. And we're going to provide a link where any listener wants to pick that up. And you said it's on Amazon. Can they pick it up anywhere else or just Amazon?
Amazon, Barnes and Noble, off of
Okay.
my website.
Okay.
It's really a guidebook. It's 155, 160 pages, really a quick read, but it's hard hitting.
Sure. Um, Now, obviously, there have been quite a few changes, I guess, in schools and school security since the continuation of school shootings, right? I mean, they do everything from putting bars on the door to putting shades down. There is all of that. I don't know that we've ever gotten to the place where teachers are armed, but there are schools out there that do have armed guards, armed, whether are they retired LE or military, or what have you typically seen?
So in Florida and Texas, they're required at public schools to have an armed person. Most of them are law enforcement or
Okay.
what we call the Guardian program or the Safe School Officer program that they've gone through something similar to the police academy and they've been tested. They've had psychological testing. They can shoot. Their equipment is pretty good. At private schools across the country, they're all over the map.
Okay.
Colorado, for example, that governor out there wants to take firearms away from school resource officers.
Insane.
Texas, yeah, it is insane. Texas and Florida, um, private schools have got the budget to do it, which is why people are migrating to private schools. One of the reasons for safety and security, and those guys are armed and well trained. The trick is to keep the bad guys out of the school.
Right.
If the officers, it's like when we were protecting people. I protected, as you know, Secretary Rumsfeld for 10 years,
Right.
Secretary of Defense Rumsfeld. If we always knew that if we had to go to gun, if we had to draw our
Right.
plan had failed. Same
Yes.
thing at a school. If you
Right.
got to get in a shooting inside a school, people are
Right.
getting shot.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's a
And
problem.
that's one thing that we talk about all the time. If it gets to the point where you have to draw your firearm as an everyday concealed carrier, you've probably missed the signs leading up to that. And that's why we push more than just firearms training. Being a survivalist and a prepared individual starts with your mind and your mindset, and understanding how to not end up in those situations. Our children they're not afforded that luxury, right? I mean, they have to go to school and they don't choose. Well, most of the times they don't choose where they go to school. Their parents do, but they also nobody chooses, you know, to allow this to happen. You can it's not as easily avoidable as just not going to the bad areas of town, late at night, right? So where you would find that these are schools. They're supposed to be secure. Um I mean, so just to ask a question, and I'm sure you probably know some of this off. Do you recall when the school shootings started to become a a thing that we actually have to worry about? I mean, I remember, the college campus that, I mean, they made that movie about with Kurt Russell way back in, um, way back in the day there. I believe that, I don't know if that was one of the first ones. Do you have any recollection of when the first actual school shooting was?
There were a few before Columbine, but Columbine really tipped the
Yes.
scale. And here's why. Why do we have school shootings?
Yeah, that was my next
Well,
question.
one is we miss the red flags.
Right.
We don't train school personnel to do something about the red flags, and if we do, we don't have them say something. Look what happened at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas. This guy
Right.
gave out all the red flags.
Right.
The other thing is video games. Video games are so realistic that kids emulate the video game. So, look, adolescents can't handle stress. So, when a boy or a girl break up, you think it's the end of the world. They're going to die. We've all heard it if we've got kids. Oh my God, the sky's falling, all that other stuff. So, some of those kids that are disaffected, they have mental issues maybe, or they're bullied. There's a bunch of different factors. But then the final factor is if they're watching video games and they decide to do something. And then they know because of the media that if they shoot up a school, they're going to be famous, right? So
I mean,
why,
yeah,
yeah,
that's interesting.
why, why we even mention their names? We should never, never, never mention the name of a school shooter.
Right.
And until the media gets that,
Right.
um, it was still going to be the same thing. Look, the chances of more school shootings in this country are 100%. It's
Yeah, of
going to
course.
happen. During the time I was writing the book and after I wrote the book, we had school shootings.
Right.
And we're
Right.
going to keep having them until we protect the school, we look for the red flags, and we do the right thing. Look at in Broward County, this Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, this guy, and I'll never mention his name,
Right.
what was killing animals in his backyard, and his neighbors knew about it. People
Yeah,
called the
exactly.
school.
Right.
He was kicked out of the school.
Right. Right.
And that day he came to school with a long gun and people saw him coming in.
Right. And then nothing was done.
You know, and yeah, and they didn't have the right plan. It's a mess. But
Right. I
what I can
Yep.
tell your listeners is they know this. If you have a school shooting in your school, you will never be the same. You'll never survive it emotionally. Whether your child gets shot or not, the school, the community will never be the same.
Yeah. Very, I mean, I think there's a lot of truth to that statement. I'm going to back you up a little bit though, on the video games thing. I'm a child of the 80s, right? I mean, we had our Ataris and our ColecoVisions. Now, obviously, video games have evolved since then, and there are these first person shooter games out there that are very, very realistic. But we didn't. So I remember growing up with my cousin, and we would go out and we would play video games, and the video games, like I said, were different then, but we would go out and play war and soldier out in the woods with sticks and whatnot, and pretending we were in battles. But you know what? I was also raised with discipline. My parents disciplined me as a child, and we didn't get away with some of this stuff. So that these kids today are getting away with, and I think it's a combination of a lot of things. And again, this may piss some people off. This may be a hard pill to swallow, but it really starts. I mean, your kid could. There are probably millions of kids out there that play video games, and there's not millions of kids that engage in school shootings, right? There are signs that are being missed by the family unit at home, whether it's a brother, a sister, a mother, a father, an aunt, an uncle. There are signs that are leading here, and it's not just video games, it's a combination of everything. It's when all of these things start intertwining is when you get these damaged kids that go out and figure this is the only way. Um,
Yep.
and that, again, that's my opinion, and it may not be shared by others. But to your point, I think parents these days are quick to just throw a screen in front of their child instead of another way. And I think that leads to a lot of this because there is a lot of information happening out here in the internet. Uh, all of it is not good all of the time, and they have access to it. And I think
Yep.
that's scary.
I think you're right. Our friend Colonel David Grossman writes about this, and he's right. From what I've seen, I've looked at every school shooting since Columbine in detail, and if your child stays up all night with a Monster drink and spends 8 or 10 hours doing a video game, not Pac-Man, but a actual shooting video game where he gets a reward or he gets to win for killing people online, and it's in the person where you'll see a scope and he's pointing the rifle and pulling the trigger with the mouse, and then you add in the lack of eating properly. They come to school if they look different, act different, smell different. If they're bullied, you have to figure in all those factors. None of these kids snap, Chris. Not one kid snap. They decide. They decide and plan to do this. It's not, oh, I'm going to take a gun to school. No, they think about it for a long period of time. They research other school shootings.
Right.
Their internet history tells that. But it's
Right.
mostly they know that the kids at school don't think they're cool because they're not on the football team, but they're going to be famous when they do this because we make them famous.
Right. But to the point that you just made right there, they don't snap, they plan. And that's where there is a lack of a supervision and acknowledgement in your kid's life to see that they've been bullied and now they're planning, and then there's 0 day, right? So it's being missed. And if you've got a child, if you've got a young child growing up and you're not monitoring their screen time and their search history, that is a and again, this is going to be maybe I'm going to hurt some people by saying this. That is on you. If they missed it, it is their fault, and they should brunt some of that. They should take some of the blame. I'm sorry that I know that's a horrible thing to say, but you look at that. The kid who just went to go shoot, or I'm sorry, attempted assassination last year of Trump. The law enforcement went to the house. They said, "Was this you?" No, this wasn't me. And the father was, I believe he was charged. And that kid is dead now. So, but moving forward there just for a second, about the video games thing. I got to tell you, I still engage in some of those things, and they're entertaining, for the most part. But there are signs. I grew up, like I said, in a different time with different rules, and we just didn't have all of that access. Now, I didn't grow up in a house where there were firearms, but you know, evil is going to find a way. Granted, evil keeps seeming to find a way with tools that are just firearms, but it's scary to think. But there was one other point that when you were just talking about some of that stuff that I was going to make, and I completely lost it. So if I come back with it, I'll jump back in. But when it comes to these school shootings, like you said, you've researched some of them. There always seems to be a manifesto, right? There's nothing that's kind of, with the exception of Sandy Hook. I don't know that there was an actual manifesto with that one. But there's always reason. Oh, this is the point. See, it's still sharp up here, Wayne. It's still sharp, even at 50. I guess I don't understand what the bullying that is happening in today's day and age in school. I can tell you, as an adolescent teenager or an adolescent boy growing up in a smaller town, I got bullied. I'm sure I got bullied. I'm sure I bullied people. We all got picked on. But it is what it's made me who I am today. It's given me that thick skin. I literally just talked to my niece a couple of weeks ago where she asked my father to pick her up early because she was dealing with some girls who were bullying her. And I'm just thinking to myself, I want to know why. And of course, it's boys and this, that, and the other thing, but I don't see my niece having any kind of issues. Obviously, none of my generation. I don't remember, when was Columbine?
Geez, it was probably 20 or 30 years ago. It was a long time ago.
Gosh, I mean, well, I believe Columbine was definitely after, and I'll do a little fact checking while I'm sitting here, but I believe Columbine was after I was out of school. Um, but I I can't remember any. So 99. Okay, so April 20th, 1999, which was 7 years after I graduated high school. And you know, I know that kids were bullied in my school growing up. And I'm sure that that's been the case across the country. It's just, it's kind of part of growing up and just, you get razzed by people and you do your own razzing. I mean, but you take that with a unstable youth because they're lacking something at home and it's a powder keg, all of it. I think everything that you're saying is that powder keg just waiting to ignite, and they plan and they plan. So it's not just, it's the bullying, it's the video games, it's the lack of supervision at home, the eating, when you talked about eating right, drinking monsters, it's all of that combined. You're throwing all of that in a cauldron and you're just mixing up this giant chemical reaction waiting to explode.
And the
And
and the and the intoxication from playing video games for 8, 12, 24 hours. These guys call their friends and they say, don't come to school tomorrow because something's going to happen.
really,
Typically,
see,
they do that. And
wow,
then they're going to be famous. We've got a 24-hour news cycle. We
yeah,
know, for example, we know when something happens in Europe or whatever, and they know that they're going to be live at 5 for the next 4 or 5 days. And
yeah,
there's going to be, by the way, there's going to be a fifth grade picture of them looking all cherubic,
yeah,
and the neighbors are going to say, "Oh, Johnny was such a sweet young kid. He went to church every day." No,
right,
nobody's saying when he was manifest, he was a stone cold killer. He played video games. That comes out later, and the police typically don't release that.
right.
So it's a combination of factors. We just have to, train people to pick up the red flags.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So now, how many schools are you working with across the country?
So currently, we're training firearms training with about 15 schools, but we've done assessments at hundreds of schools. In other
Okay,
words, we'll go do a 2 or 3 day assessment, give them a report with photographs. Some school principals and boards don't even know. I've had one out west in Arkansas. They didn't know that the cooks were using a propane tank to heat up school lunches inside the kitchen.
wow, that's
So just silly little things like that. Sometimes we find the blocks have been broken, and well, they told the maintenance guy to fix it, but they didn't follow up. So what I do, because I worked on a red team for Homeland Security after 9/11, is if I've got a 9 o'clock appointment at a school, I get there at 8 o'clock,
sure,
and I walk in the back door,
right,
and sometimes I'm sitting in a classroom when the teacher comes in, and she says, "Can I help you?" I say, "Well, I don't know. I got a meeting." She doesn't call the police. She doesn't walk me to the office. She
right,
just lets me go.
wow.
So those are the ones that we have to worry about, and we talk about that in the book. So,
Now,
look,
do you get brought on by someone outside of the school, like for the district, so the school doesn't, like, I feel like that would make sense where you come in to assess that situation before the school knows you're coming in to assess their security situation, so you can give them a proper assessment, not one that
t-
they can plan for.
yeah, typically it's a board or the law firm that represents the school, and the
Okay,
principal always knows. So the
okay,
principal may not tell the teachers because I've got a 9 o'clock meeting with him. So there's no reason for him to tell the teacher. And then at the end of the 2 day or 3 day assessment, I have a tabletop exercise where we get senior staff and as many teachers as can into the room, and we ask them, "What are you going to do?" We go through the tabletop. 9 o'clock, this happens. 9:02, this happens. After each slide on the tabletop PowerPoint, we ask them what they're doing. A lot of schools have paid $50,000 or more for an ERP, an emergency response plan that's about
sure,
this thick.
yep,
I've never in a tabletop had anyone refer to that emergency response plan.
interesting,
Never.
Wow.
So, and they don't. And that
Yeah.
whole thing about, well, we have a reunification center. If we have a shooting, a reunification location is down the street in the parking lot of the Wendy's. The parents aren't going to go there.
No.
They're,
No.
they're you saw Uvalde.
Yeah.
They're coming. They're coming to the school,
Yeah.
and they're not going. So forget it. When
Right.
it all turns to what.
So you bring up Uvalde. Lot a lot of speculation, judgment, armchair quarterbacking around Uvalde based on reaction, non-reaction. Um, that stems from Coral Springs, Major Stone, Florida, right? I mean, the Florida situation left a lot of people kind of, for the lack of better terms, gun shy, or law enforcement gun shy about, what to do. Uvalde, they didn't do. Um, how much involvement do you have when it comes to that with some of these people? Like, you're not, are you dealing with local law enforcement in the school districts as well as the school?
Yep.
Okay.
Some schools, like in Florida, have a school board. Some districts have a school board police, and so we deal with them. Um, at the time of Marjorie Stoneman Douglas in Parkland, they had sheriff's deputies. They had a sheriff's deputy out there. We call him the coward of Broward because he didn't engage.
Right.
Uvalde was worse. Look,
Right.
since Columbine, the plan has been since Columbine. Don't wait for the SWAT team. You have to engage one by one. So if you're at the school and you're a police officer, you've got to engage. If you don't want to engage, and we've told them this at training, if you don't want to engage, take that badge off and go sell car insurance or something.
Right.
And yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's dangerous, but that's your job. You're going to have
That's
to
your job.
step over
Exactly.
the injured kids and engage. And that's the
Right.
only thing that's going to gunmen in school stop because they run out of ammo, they commit suicide, or they're engaged.
Right.
So you saw in Tennessee when the officers engaged the person, they dropped their gun. So that happens.
Right.
Uvalde was terrible. What happened in Uvalde, remember, is after the first 4 or 5 guys did engage, they ran down the hall. They said it was a hostage. You could still hear gunshots. There,
Mm.
and when other people came, there was this group think, fight or flight scenario. Those other 20, 30, 40, 50 officers were probably psychologically incapable of engaging because the first guys didn't engage.
Right.
But they didn't have a plan. It took the BORTAC agent who was getting his haircut at the
Right.
time to
Yep.
drive to the school and finally take the guy out.
Right. Now,
Just outrageous.
exactly, disgusting, and criminal. Uh, now, the question about them not engaging, is it fear that they're going to get shot, or fear that they are going to get crucified by the public, the media, the lawyers, the parents? I mean, there is definitely a fear that's stopping them. I don't, and maybe I'm just overstepping here. I don't think that they're afraid of a 16-year-old gunman with zero training. I don't think that it's that. It can't be that. These people can't be in this position if that's what they're afraid of.
And look, Chris, it's a combination of two things: fear and lack of training, and
Yeah.
probably 75% fear of the gunman and the rest lack of training. If you've never trained, look, a rifle shot inside a school is really, really loud,
Oh,
and
sure.
it's going to put you in audio shock. You can see in the video in Uvalde of those guys wincing,
Yeah.
holding their ears. Right? One guy was one guy was so much in shock he went over and put the hand sanitizer on his hands. Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I wrote an article right after that for the Federalist, and after that, somebody from the chief's office in Uvalde called and said he was going to sue me for defamation. I said, come on, that'll be great. Come to Miami, I'll take your deposition, and we'll see what your level of training was. And he was fired the next day.
Yeah.
Then the Department of Justice report came out, and they were very strong. Even for the Biden Department of Justice, they were strong, and they brought up all the failures.
Right.
And that was a good report. Then the city paid $100,000 to some local yokel who wrote a report that said, I don't know if you saw this, that said they acted properly. Yeah. Kids are
Uh,
dead. Teachers
yeah,
are dead. No, no.
I mean,
So
well, that it's just it's not. Unfortunately, it's not surprising. Um, some of the stuff you hear out there when it comes to this kind of polarizing situation, it's not surprising that you would have people out there making this statement. Um,
it
well,
goes back to it goes look, Chris, it goes back to what you guys are doing, preparedness. I go to schools and I ask them a couple questions. How many tourniquets do you have?
oh yeah,
And they'll say, "Well, I think we have 1 or 2." Okay, and every school should have at least 20 tourniquets. Why? Because in every school shooting, at least 20 people are shot.
right,
Half of those kids bled to death from venous wounds, not necessarily arterial wounds.
right,
So you engage, you get in, you stop the bleed.
yeah,
Schools should have stop the bleed training. The other thing I ask them is, "How much Narcan do you have?" "What do you mean Narcan?"
okay,
I said, "Well,
interesting,
100,000 people last year died of fentanyl overdose. It's
yeah,
transdermal.
yeah,
So why not have Narcan?" So it's
right.
about planning. It's about planning.
Well,
And
yeah, and I think it's very, very clear that um there are soft targets like schools that need to be hardened, and with a variety of things, right? Medical, like you just stated, um, just a survival mindset, like you said. Yes, firearm training is great, but how many of those armed officers are in a school?
yeah,
Roughly, how
not
many?
well,
Like
public
one
schools
school.
are
Yeah,
there
you get
public
one.
schools there might be one, there might be
Might
two.
might
And
be.
hopefully they're at the front door, all the other doors are locked down.
And maybe that's changed over time, and I really hope that it has. I don't remember doors being locked when I went to high school. I
Same.
remember there being at least four entrances on the four corners of the school, entrances, exits that you could go in and out of. Again, we're talking different times. We're talking in the late 80s, early 90s, when this thing wasn't really um, a thing. But times have changed. So now I believe it wasn't Uvalde an issue like that where the door was left propped open, like some
Well,
some door.
yeah, he got in, but the classroom door where the shooter was, they were trying to get a key.
Yes, that's right.
They didn't
Yeah,
need a key. The
right.
lock was broken. They could have just opened the door.
Open the door. Right,
Nobody tried the door.
right. But he gained access into the building because a door was left propped open or something like that. Correct? If
The door
yeah,
was open.
no,
What he did was he wrecked his car. Remember, he shot at a
yeah,
couple people, killed his grandparents,
yeah,
went to school and took hostages, and then
yeah.
started doing that.
Now, and so I'm going to wrap that up with the one person, right? So we just talked about having tourniquets, having Narcan. One, maybe one, hopefully two armed officers in a school. I hope that that's enough, but these schools are pretty big. You're not talking a really small school. And if they are not properly positioned at an entrance where that individual does not get in, does not figure out a way to get in, then you are still going to have to deal with tragedy before they actually engage, if if they are not paralyzed by fear. I feel like, and this is probably a slippery slope, because they did the whole armed teachers thing, and I don't know where I fall on the armed teachers thing, but a trained teacher is something else, not just trained with a firearm. A, trained with medical. B, trained with some kind of survivalist mindset, mentality, training, something to, okay, we're going to put the blinds down in front of our window and we're going to barricade the door. I mean, sure, that's where it starts, right? But maybe some kind of other plan. I mean, I talk about my with my co-host on the show all the time. If you end up in a survival situation where you're stranded or whatnot, he's trained to self-rescue. And at some point, the teachers in that classroom need to accept the fact that they may be their own first responder. whether it comes
Oh
to,
yeah,
right?
100,
Like,
no, 100%. They are.
right.
They are.
And hiding in the corner with the students because you put the blind down and you put a desk in front. I don't know that that's being the first responder. But again, I know this is a sensitive subject, and I can only speak to how I think I would react in a situation, and it's very hard to do because you're not actually in that situation. So,
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what
We
your thoughts on that are, but
No, I agree. We teach teachers how to lock the doors, pull the blinds down, put the kids in a quarter, but stand by the edge of the door. So if the intruder breaches the door, they can at least jump on them, either hit them with a fire extinguisher or a stapler. And if they control the muzzle, whether it's a rifle or a pistol, if they control the muzzle, they control the gun.
right,
So
right,
it's as simple as that. We do it with blue gun training.
right.
There's a good kind of training called AVERT, AVERT, that schools use, and it talks about stop the bleed, CPR, AED, all that stuff, and that also talks about how to handle a weapon if it comes in the door. But it's all about training. Look, schools have to have a choke point, and that's where the officer is. Too many schools have the officer out directing traffic in the parking lot and picking up
Yeah,
putting kids in cars. No, they need to be at the door in the morning, and that's the choke point. And
yeah,
only and a controlled door, one door in the front, one door in the back. An officer per door
yeah.
is where it should be. Yeah.
Now, you know what I would love to do some research on, and maybe you've already done this. Um, how many how many schools, high schools, middle schools, whatever, have been built since the emergence of all of these school shootings? So 99 was the first one that was a real kind of game changer when it came to this. Are they building new schools to address these situations? Because like I said, my high school, when I was there, had at least minimum 4 entrances and exits on 4 corners of the building. I mean,
Yeah. I've
are
I've
they
seen I've seen one in Delaware with an airlock, two sets of doors that were on buzzers,
okay?
and they have a ballistic window tint on those doors, two sets of doors. So if as long as the human element doesn't screw it up and open both doors at the same time, that's really good.
Right.
So and maybe they did it for weather, but to answer your question, no.
Yeah.
A lot of schools, new schools, are built with a lot of glass. That makes me crazy.
Unbelievable.
Um, yeah.
Unbelievable.
The
So,
other thing that the other thing
yeah.
that happens, Chris, just real quick,
Yeah,
and
of
it's good
course.
good for your listeners. Schools are required to have fire drills.
That's
Drills.
exactly what I was just going to talk about. Good. Let's get into it.
Okay. There hasn't been a child burned in a school since 1950 and at a little wooden schoolhouse in Texas, yet we have these fire drills.
Right.
Almost every school shooter pulls the fire alarm. The
I,
kids
I,
that get kids
yeah,
that get hurt are the
yeah,
ones that evacuate because of muscle memory. So what we're doing with private schools and every public school that'll listen is they a fire alarm, not a drill. Fire alarm goes off. That's calls for a lockdown. Unless they smell smoke or see flames, they lock down in the room. The same thing with a bomb threat. There's never been a bomb threat go off in a school when they called in. So a bomb
right.
threat and a fire alarm should initiate a lockdown.
Right. Yeah. And that's what I was going to say. When I grew up, we were running fire drills that would take people out of a secure building into the wide open, waiting for them to give the all clear. So you're standing out there for how long? I mean, the fact that that wasn't a more utilized tactic is surprising. But I know that they train people for active shooters now in schools, right? They do have active shooter training drills or active shooter drills that they run. Is that
Yeah,
something that you
some people.
guys do?
Yeah, yeah, some schools do. We
Okay.
don't do it with the kids there. What we
Okay.
do is we invite the local law enforcement, the SWAT teams, and everybody to come to the school after hours or on weekends, so they
Gotcha.
become familiar with the school.
Okay.
And we let them run Sims training
Oh, perfect.
and rubber bullet training in the
Sure.
school,
Yep.
and they practice room clearing and stuff like that. They learn in the school. The other thing we encourage schools to do is provide free lunches to law enforcement. Well, what happens? You're going to give a cop a free lunch. He's going to
Right.
come to school,
Right. Yeah.
they park the car out front. It's a deterrent. They come to the cafeteria. They eat with the kids. So that's all good stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, and so we've talked a lot about school shootings and securing schools. I know that's what the book is based on, but you guys do more than just that. Obviously, the firearms training is for kind of all of that, right? So it's whether it's the school shooting as well. What other kind of training does Wayne Black and Associates have? Now, before you answer that, so you're Wayne Black, and then there's the associates. How many guys are you working with? Guys or gals are you working with?
Well, you see, I have some associates online. Some of them are from Secret Service, DEA. Um, got a SEAL commander on there, Dan O'Shea.
Okay,
Depends on what part of the country we provide the training. What we're doing that's different is EDC training, everyday carry training. So
perfect.
you get a gun, and you go buy a gun, whether you buy a little one or a big one, and then you can carry the gun. You go to the little course and you shoot once or twice, but nobody tells you how to draw the gun and
Right,
engage and what to do. Nobody shows you what you can do with your gun and how accurate you can be. So
right,
that's what we're do that I think is interesting. We show people a draw stroke from concealed. We shoot from a car,
sure.
um, but it's all about not putting yourself in that situation to begin with. And that's
Right,
like the last if you have to draw your personal gun, your everyday carry, you're in that last 3 or 4% of survival. You
right.
may not make it. And you have a complex reaction time. And by that I mean the bad guy has already pulled a knife or a gun on you.
Yeah.
And now you, depending on your OODA loop, observe, orient, decide, and act, depending on
Yeah.
your OODA loop, you've got to be able to react. So I always tell people when you drive down the street, car pulls in front of you, you automatically go to the brake because that's muscle memory. You practice that. It's cognitive training. We want to get people to do that with their gun. Know when to draw it, when to run, mostly
Sure.
when to run and get
Right.
out of the way. And so, if you got a little like a Glock 43X or a Sig 365, unless you're Kyle Lamb or somebody like that from Delta,
Right.
if it's over 7 yards, you're not going to hit the target.
Yeah. Right. Well, and or that guy from the mall. That was
Oh, that was amazing.
right. Yeah. Exactly. Um, and so you're right. We, obviously we push training often, and ZERT back in its earlier days provided a lot of training when it was located in Las Vegas. And we do have some hurdles now when it comes to firearms training. um my thing with most people when it comes to training is, like you just said, right? You go and you get your pistol, you take the class to go shoot your however many rounds so you can get your piece of paper so you can go get your permit. And then you go to the gun store, you buy your gun and you start carrying it. And nowadays you go to a local gun store, the guy will tell the person coming up saying, this is the gun you need, and you need to have a red dot on it, and you need to have this, and you need to have this. And they don't even know how to use iron sights, much less use a red dot. So all of it is bad. It's all bad. Now that person at the gun store is doing it because they're, add-on sales. They're trying to get that price ticket up. Um, I'm Because of my time in the firearms industry and being a concealed carrier for so many years, I get asked all the time, what kind of firearm? What should I get? What should I get? I always go down the same path with folks, like, you go rent this gun, and this gun, go to the range, see which one you shoot better, see which one feels good in your hand. And then we can kind of course correct from there. If you like the Glock, but the 19 is too big, then we can go with a 43X or a 48. I'm not really pushing SIG right now with their whole P320 situation, but the 365 macro is an amazing pistol. Smith & Wesson has a reliable platform that is really underrated when it comes to these guns. The Ruger RXM, which I just did a review on, amazing. But none of that matters if you do not know how to operate it when you need to operate with that firearm. Fight or flight is a thing. I don't know that that can be taught to somebody. I believe that is kind of ingrained in your DNA. You are either going to run from the gunshots or run to the gunshots. You don't know until that happens. But training to use your firearm should be all of the time. I do it probably every single night in my house, dry. I have a firearm, my carry gun. I sit there and I do mag changes, drop the mag, acquire a target, squeeze the trigger, make sure that my sights are not my red dot. The eye sights are bad, but I have trained with a red dot. So I can shoot my iron sights and I can also shoot a red dot. But I do that for hours, just do mag changes, punch out, acquire a target, a spot on the wall, squeeze the trigger, click, reset, do it all again, I do that every single night. Those are reps and those are free. Those don't cost a thing. You don't have to leave your pajamas. You can do it here.
Yep. Well, what's good about that is you then develop not only muscle memory, but natural point of aim.
Right.
And
Right.
so you do the same thing over and over and over again. As long as, practice doesn't make perfect. Perfect
No.
practice makes perfect. So as
Yes.
long
Yeah.
as you do that,
Yeah.
you'll be in
Yeah.
good shape. Dry firing is so important.
Oh yeah. We also push the Mantis program. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Mantis, Mantis X, the Blackbird. They actually have a new product coming out, which maybe by the time this episode drops, we'll have already put some information out. But there's something new coming out. That will the Mantis, the Blackbeard is amazing if you want to train with your rifle. You can clear your house, you can train for all of that. The pistol situation is a little bit wonky. If you have a ZERT pistol or one of those training pistols with a laser, you can do a little bit more. Now, like you just said, it's not going to make it perfect because you don't have to worry about recoil and the rest of the fundamentals, but it gives you a roadmap to start with. Get out and train. And I'm not saying going to your local flat range with 100 rounds and a piece of paper hanging 7 yards away. While 7 yards is great, you need, it's flat, it's not moving. You tell me one person, like these school shooters, these threats, you're not going to sit there and be like, hold on, wait, stand still, stand 7 yards in front of me and let me go ahead and address you. No, you're going to have to potentially make a shot in moving or on a moving target. If that happens, know how to do all that, know how to clear your cover garment. And those are all things that you guys push in your EDC class. Is that correct?
Absolutely, we do. And we have the other thing we push is an extra mag. So
Oh,
extra mag and a flashlight. So
yeah.
a streamlight or something, not necessarily on the gun, but one you can carry, and
Hmm.
an extra mag in your pocket, where you go to the movie theaters or whatever you have. Be armed and just be ready, and hopefully you never
Yeah.
have to use it.
Yeah. Now, one thing we say here, I mean, it's you've heard it numerous times, but two is one is none. So while yes, a handheld flashlight is great. I carry one in my left pocket, and I carry a weapon mounted light as well. I do have one magazine in the firearm, and I carry a second spare magazine in the holster with it. The mag holster.
Yep.
Not to mention, and we talk about this all the time. This is a favorite of mine. What I have on me gets me to my vehicle. What I have in my vehicle gets me home. What I have at home allows me to either shelter in place or head to the mountains and be Charlie Sheen in Red Dawn. Um,
Yep. So the other thing is
mhm.
a tourniquet.
Oh yeah,
If you carry a gun, and we like your company that you recommend in Miami, by the way, good group. If
yep,
you carry a gun, you ought to carry a tourniquet,
of
and
course,
it's for yourself.
right,
And what we do in our EDC classes, we'll get everybody lined up. Okay, we're going to shoot a failure drill. And just before I call the drill, I go, "You've now been shot in the left knee. You have arterial bleeding. Do the tourniquet and finish the drill."
yep,
So there's a certain kind of tourniquets, like a soft T
yep,
that you can buckle. Where the cat tourniquet, you have to pull it over your foot.
yeah,
So
yeah.
we see how
Um,
quick they can do it.
yes, and that's great. And that's something we push. Obviously, if you carry stuff to put holes in people, you better carry stuff to plug those holes. And I think that's important. And then have the training to do it. Like I think I said to you on the phone, right? I'm 0 for 18,000 or 16,000 days on having to use my firearm. I'm that many days old, but I am not that many days old without ever having to use some kind of medical skills, to whether it's to stop a bleed, to, you know, help an injured person, or whatever the case may be. Those things will pop up. But more importantly, I don't know if this is just ingrained in people or not. I mean, problem solving skills are very, very important and crucial. I, I think people should understand how to solve problems, whatever the case may be, whatever that problem is, right? And having to provide medical gear in a stressful situation when stuff is still happening around you, those are all problem solving steps that need to happen. Who's calling 911? Who's staying on the phone? Who's rendering aid? You know, if you're with a group of people, are they trained? Do they know what to do? Are you going to take control? I mean, are those things that you work in groups when these folks take this stuff? I mean, obviously I know you do the EDC stuff, but you also do house of worship security, so churches and stuff like that, right? When
Yep, we
there's
do all of that.
do all that. Now, who do you train there? Is it
What
usually just
church?
an
Yeah,
officer?
some churches have security teams now,
Okay.
and some are armed and some aren't. We basically put comms on them,
Okay.
right? Radios. You can nowadays you can buy a Baofeng radio,
Yeah.
16 channel for 18 bucks, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So with an earpiece. So we want to keep the problem outside.
Right.
So you get guys outside that are greeting people. Hi, we know you whenever you come in. And then the person that looks a little weird, they talk to them. Can I help you? What are you doing? We've had people show up at churches that smell like gasoline.
Wow.
Why? Why do you smell like gas? Well, I spilled some gas on myself. So don't let them in.
Right.
Tell them
Right. That's
you'll pray for them at home,
yeah.
and then let them go take a shower.
Yeah.
If they're covered in gas, they can light themselves up in the
Yeah.
church.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then have a plan. The other thing about a church is, especially if you have armed people, they got to think about line of fire.
Yeah.
So if they're on both sides, what do you have? If they have to shoot, you have a circular firing squad.
Yeah. Of course.
So and it's really difficult. The trick is to teach them not to shoot if they can't be sure they hit the target. Jack
Right.
Wilson, Jack
Yeah. Yeah.
Wilson, Texas Church. I
Yep.
had dinner. I had dinner with Jack at the NRA last year in Texas, and he said that he felt the Lord guided that shot. He made that long head shot of the guy up front. He
Yeah.
said, "I'm a good shot and all that, but something just made me calm and pull the trigger, take up the slack, and squeeze the trigger, let it be a surprise break." And he made the shot.
Yeah.
So, but that's like 1 in a million for something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
let they knew that guy was nuts. The
Oh.
pastor, and they
Over.
let him in the church. They never
Wow.
should have been there. He
No.
killed he killed 2 people.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, and I think what you do goes beyond just pulling a trigger and teaching, someone how to shoot. It's teaching someone how to assess threats before they become threats. And I think that's probably the most important thing that Wayne Black and Associates could continue to share. And it can be kind of extrapolated over house of worship, schools, everyday carry. It's definitely something that we talk about all the time. Again, it goes back to mindset. It goes back to observant. Like, are you a trained observer? Do you look around when you go out to a restaurant with your dinner, or I'm sorry, when you go out to a restaurant with your family and have dinner, are you scanning the room? Are you looking to see what's kind of off? Are you, when you park in the parking lot and you've got to walk, do you kind of observe that parking lot? Okay, is there anything that is suspicious on the way? Is there a guy hanging out by the cars just watching? All of those things need to be part of your process.
Show me a victim of a crime, and I'll show you a very aware person all of a sudden, in hindsight.
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
walking to and from your car,
Yeah.
whether it's home or a business, talking on this cell phone is
Yeah.
terrible.
Yeah.
You're like the zebra at the watering hole in those National Geographic movies, the ones that the tiger always eats.
Oh
You
yeah.
got your head down, you're not looking around. You're the perfect victim.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah,
And
yeah,
yeah.
you guys are
Yeah.
doing the Lord's work with that.
Well, we try. We have we obviously have a global community, and this organization has been around for, I guess this is going to be our 14th year, and we've got members all over the globe, and we're continuing to try and gain more members to the ZERT community, and to this brand and lifestyle that we push. Um, it did start off very, very firearms heavy, very firearms focused when it comes to training. And I find it weird that I say this myself, because I'm a firearms guy. I love firearms. I wanted it to be more of a survivalist and a preparedness organization, more than just firearms. If there is a shit hits the fan situation, your ability to hunt with a rifle will not keep you alive completely. Like your ability to hunt and kill animals will not make you survive for longer periods of time. And that's when I bring it back to its mindset. And anybody out there can go watch any season of Alone. Are you familiar with the show? Great show. You
Sure.
can watch any season of Alone, and even guys that are out there catching 4 fish a day end up becoming victim to their mind, and they crack mentally because they're missing something at home or whatever. I'm not saying don't have a heart and don't miss your loved ones if you go do something like that, but you've got to be able to compartmentalize, and your mind is your most valuable and strongest weapon. So
Yep.
that's just my piece of it. But um one of the other things I see, as we kind of get here and we wrap this up, I see lifestyle threat assessment as an available service on your website. Do you guys do a lot with that, or does that kind of go hand in hand with the EDC stuff?
No, we do that. It's typically separate. We do it
Okay.
here in the U.S. and in foreign countries. We're doing an anti-kidnapping program in Bolivia.
Oh, okay.
That's
Wow.
a little different, but the threat assessment, and that can be locks, alarms. What do you do? Executives, do you have a plan at home? Do you have a duress word? For example, if you're a banker and your secretary's name's Sally, and the plan is if you walk in with a guy, you're the banker, and you go, "Hi, Julie, how are you?" That's the duress word. Then
Oh, okay.
Julie has a plan. She calls the police, whatever it is, because you may be hostage. Same thing with your spouse. So we
Right.
do all that stuff. We did it for a bunch of cabinet people. We did it for the Secretary of Defense, and they're just as important. The regular person is just as important as those
Yeah.
people. We always say we can protect the president, right? The Secret Service does that. Our kids in school are just as important as the president.
Oh, yeah,
So
for sure.
let's protect them.
Awesome. Good stuff. Now, one last thing, and we kind of push this out there, um, based off of a video that I have recorded, and probably by the time this comes out, will have been released over on the main channel on YouTube. I fully believe that we are going to head on have a collision with another pandemic, and it's going to be a global pandemic, and I think that it's going to be a digital pandemic. And what's really interesting about it is I watched a movie over the weekend that it was trending number one in the US, and it was on Prime, and it was called G20, and it starred, I think, Viola Davis and Anthony Starr, and again, terrorists, and Viola Davis was the president. Terrorists taking over an event, and they captured all of these world leaders and had them speak a phrase that allowed them to say every letter within the alphabet. And then they were able to deep fake their voice over their face being captured saying things about the economy and the market. And basically, the premise was they were going to use these deep fakes to destroy the way of life because it was a financial crash and it was going to create mass hysteria. So, where I'm going with this is, uh, with the emergence of artificial intelligence and AI doing things now that On one hand, it's amazing. On the other hand, it scares the shit out of me. What is are there things that you and your team are looking at as far as protecting when it comes to a from digital security? Like, how do you protect your digital lifestyle or your digital life?
That's pretty tough. Well, that's way down the list for us.
Yeah,
Here's what I think. We've let in 10 million plus people.
of course.
We've let in Hamas and
Yeah,
other terrorist groups. One can only watch TV and see in New York all these pro-Palestine, pro-Hamas groups. This looks like 1932 Germany,
right.
right?
Yeah,
I think the chances of a suicide vest attack are really, really good.
uh,
Friends that I know that are in the business, that are analysts, are telling me that there could be 1,000 suicide bombers
yeah,
in the U.S.
yeah,
ready to launch.
yeah,
So I'm worried about a CCA, a complex coordinated attack. That's a
yeah,
big deal.
yeah.
Which is,
It is
which is why we should train and be able to protect our family and have a plan. We got to have a
right.
plan.
But and this will be the last point, and then we can wrap this up. Having a firearm in a situation like that is not going to save you. Okay. So just think about that. If what Wayne just said really happens, some terrorist goes and clacks off a vest, having a firearm, and you're in the vicinity, having a firearm is not going to save you. Having a tourniquet, having a medical kit, and having medical training and being able to keep a calm, even keeled mind is what's going to help you through that situation. So,
Yeah,
uh,
100%. Look, Chris, if Las Vegas would have been a complex coordinated attack,
yeah,
they'd had a second shooter on the ground, they could have killed 5,000 people.
yeah,
So the trick is to know your situation, but be able to recover. You've got 60 or 90 seconds to stop that arterial bleed. So that IFAC is so important.
right, right. Well, folks, with that being said, thank you so much for joining us here today to meet Wayne. And Wayne, thank you. This was a great episode. I often do these things, and like I said, I like to keep them to an hour because it's respectful of everybody's time. And you know, but I often find myself being able to just sit here and talk for hours. And I feel like you and I could talk for another 2 hours on this stuff and
We could
easily
do.
not skip a beat. But thank you for coming on. I like to give all of my guests and hosts a last thought. So Wayne, do you have anything for us at the end here?
You're doing the right thing. Your channel is great. Keep up the good work. And, if you can save a bunch of people through this and prepare them, that's all that matters.
Awesome. Well, listen, guys, until next time, you stay safe, you stay prepared. ZP002